right, so with still staying with lesson 11.2, looking at exponential functions, we're going to graph two different types today then. So we've got, in this case, we're going to be looking at still y equals a times b dx, but a is going to be less than 0, b is greater than 1. So what does it mean when a is less than 0? What numbers are less than 0? Negative numbers, okay? So the value of a is going to be negative. And so this is actually going to be producing a graph that's going to look similar to the one we did there in that warm-up. Okay? So first thing, like we have been doing then, is we're going to make a table. We'll use 5 or 6 numbers for x, then find our y values, and then graph it. Okay? So let's use the same numbers we were looking at yesterday. About that. So hold on here. All right, so we'll put in our -2. I wonder why these are so small. I know what I need to do. All right. -1, 0, 1, and 2. Okay. All right. Now, so like we did yesterday, we said, okay, the first thing we're going to do is, we're going to work with 0. Okay. So what's -1/4 times 2 raised to the power of 0? Okay. Because anything raised to the power of 0 is 1, right? Okay, so this is going to be -1/4. All right. So what does this 2 mean then? What's 2 mean? Okay, we're multiplying by 2 each time, right? Okay, so we're going to double our answer. So what's double 1/4? A half. Is it positive or negative? Negative, okay. All right. And when I multiply -1/2 times 2, I get -1. Okay, and if I went to 3 down here, let's do that. What do I get if I double it again? Okay, so -2 and so on, right? Okay, so what if we go the other way then? At -1, then it would be what? Okay, what's half? Okay, we were doubling to go from here to here, so then we're going backwards, right? Okay, if I went from 1/4 to 1/2, it would go from 1/4 to 1/8. Okay, so this would be -1/8, and this would be -1/16. Okay. All right, does that make sense? Megan, you all right with that then? Okay. So let's see if they like me. Nope, doesn't like me. All right, that's fine. Okay, so when we plot these points then on our graph, we've got the point 0, -1/4. We'll start with that one, so that's approximately right there. And 1 is at -1/2. 2 is at -1. 3 is at -2. What if I went to 4? Where would that be at? -4. Let's get a little bit more of our curve here then. Okay. All right. Now these other ones, these are really small, aren't they? They're going to be really close to the line. So when we draw our graph is going to go down as it goes to the right. Okay. Make sure, once again, you don't cross over the x-axis, because they're all negative in this case then. So think about it, all right? Yesterday, we looked at these ones, where a was greater than 0 and b greater than 1. And now when we look at a is less than 0, b is greater than 1, well, those were all in the first quadrant, or were in the top half of the graph, right? The ones we were doing yesterday all look like this. What's the difference between them? Right? That value of a is negative. Well, what happens when we multiply by a negative number? We get a reflection, okay? A vertical reflection. So where these went up to the right yesterday, okay, if I change the value of a and make it negative, then it's going to go down to the right and all the values are going to be negative. But if you graph them correctly, you'll see that too. All right, so let's look at one other one. Okay. So how about when we have y equals a times b dx, we're going to deal with b is between 0 and 1. So in this case, b is between 0 and 1 instead. So now each time we're going to be multiplying by 1/4. Does that mean the numbers are going to get bigger or smaller? Okay, they're going to get smaller. If we multiply by a fraction, our numbers are going to be smaller. And sometimes we almost need to go farther into the negatives too to help us with the graphs. We'll see what happens here. Okay, so we're starting here again. Negative 1 times 1/4 to the power of 0. What's that equal to? Okay, 1/4 to the power of 0 is 1. So negative 1 times 1/4 is negative 1. And then each time I'm just going to multiply by 1/4. So negative 1 times 1/4 is negative 1/4, right? Okay. If we multiply 1/4 times 1/4, we get what? So 1/4, negative 1/4 times 1/4 is negative 1/16. Okay, well then this is just going to keep getting closer to 0, isn't it, when I go to 3. All right, so let's go the other way. So here's the thing. Multiplying by 1/4 is the reciprocal of multiplying by, or the opposite of multiplying by, okay, it's reciprocal of multiplying by 4, right? Okay, so if I'm going down here to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, I'm multiplying by 1/4. But if I want to go up, then I want to multiply by 4. Okay, all right. So this would be negative 4 here, and this would be negative 16. Okay. Now, I want to prove that to you. I don't want you just to take my word for it. Okay, so take out your calculator if you're not using it. Pull it out for a second. Now, let's look at the, so we start out, we have negative 1 times, and in parentheses, I'm going to have 1/4. Okay, and let's raise it to the power of 0 anyway, just to check it. Okay, negative 1. All right, we all agreed on that. All right, okay. So now, here I'm going to show you a little trick. All right, it's kind of a pain typing that in, right? Okay, here's a trick. Your calculator has a scrolling feature. Okay, so if you just push the up arrow, it'll go back up there. You can hit enter. All right, that'll pull it down. Now you can go back and you can change anything you want. All right, so let's put negative 1 there for the exponent. Negative 4. Okay, so I can scroll up again so I don't have to type all that stuff. Hit enter and change it to negative 2. All right, we get negative 16. All right, Wanted to verify that for you so that you knew that that is true. Okay? What's that? I know, you can put them in your y equals and do that too. Okay? I didn't want to go there yet. Right. Okay, so we need to make our graph. Well, here I've got negative 16, so I need my graph needs to be a little bit bigger than this, doesn't it? Okay, so I need, oops. This is going to be a pretty steep graph then. So I've got the points 0, negative 1, that's right here, my y-intercept. Negative 2, negative 6, or negative 1, negative 4, right there. Negative 2, negative 16. Then I've got these other two that I can't put them in there. So 1, negative 1/4, and oops, 1, negative 1/4, 2, negative 1/16. So this graph's going to look like this. Very steep. But notice where are all the number answers at? They're all negative because our value of A is negative. Okay, so we make a table. Go from there. Now Dylan says, he says, I can just type that in my y equals and I have this table. Now, there's only one thing about that, Dylan, is that when we get to the test for this chapter, you're going to have to do some of this without a calculator. Just letting you all know that when we get to the test for this chapter, there are some questions I will be asking you that you will not be allowed to use a calculator on. So, all right, that puts you in panic mode now. You have a little while before we get to that point, so just be prepared. All right? Okay, let's look at another one. So this one had B is between 0 and 1, and A was negative, so A less than 0 here. And then we're going to look at, here we've got, A. So in this case, A is greater than 0. Okay? So whenever A is less than 0, your graph better be where? Okay, in the negatives, below the x-axis. Okay? If A is greater than 0, all my answers are going to be positive, so above the x-axis. So remember that. There's a couple of little hints for you then. All right, so use our same numbers. Maybe we add a 3 down here. Okay, we've got 2 times 1/4 to the power of x. So we're still using 1/4 again, which is nice. We like 1/4. It's an easy fraction to work with. So start out with our 0 again. 1/4 to the power of 0 is 1, right? And so 2 times 1 is 2. Okay. Then to get to go down to 1 to 2 to 3, we need to multiply by 1/4 then, because that's our value of B. So this is going to be 2 times 1/4 to the first power. Oh, what's 1/4 of 2? 1/2, right? Okay, 1/4 of 2 is 1/2. So I have $2, 1/4 of that is 50 cents, isn't it? Okay, all right, so this is 1/2. And if I take 1/2 and multiply it by 1/4, we get 1/8. All right. And then this would be, if we needed it, be 1/32. That's a really small number, hard to graph that number. Okay. So then we go the other way. Okay. So basically, instead of dividing by 4, we're going to multiply by 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 4 is 32. Now here's a situation where the numbers are growing really fast, and so you don't need to plot quite as many points as we were. So we'll make this a little bit bigger here. All right, let's see what we got. So in this case, I'm not going to do the 32. Okay, that number is so big that as long as my graph represents that, I should be fine. So we have 0, 2, negative 1, 8. Oops, not there. And let's see, 1, 1 half. Okay. So then I'm going to draw my graph. It's going to be pretty steep again. But just make sure you stay above the x-axis. Okay. All right, that's pretty easy, right? For the most part, for some of us, maybe not everybody. Now here's a little chart then that shows you what's going to happen. Those things, I was just writing them down. This box, which is, I don't know, it's on one of those pages. What page is that on, Morgan? Can you tell me? Should be on the very last page before the homework. Okay, 775. This is on that page. So it tells you here, if b is greater than 1, a is positive, it goes up. A is negative, it goes down. Okay? If b is between 0 and 1, a is positive, a is negative, tells you what your graphs should look like. Now, so you should understand that whenever that b can never be negative. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. B has to be a positive number. It's the value of A. If A is positive, your graphs are always going to be above the x-axis. If A is negative, your graph has got to be below the x-axis. So compare them. All right? Put this chart where you can access it if you need to, or have it in your book there and say, okay, here's the graph. Here's the equation. All right, here's my y equals. It says I have negative A, b is greater than 1. Okay, negative a, so a is negative, b is greater than 1. So my graph should look something like that when I'm done. Okay. All right. Any questions?